Hey, I'm James from Soaking Dad Barbecue, and can you believe it has been 4 years already since I did my first unboxing of my Kamado Joe Big Joe Series 3. That is one of the Kamados that Kamado Joe sent to me. I am a customer and went and bought my own Kamado Joe Big Joe Series 1, but a lot has changed in the 4 years since I did that first unboxing video, including a couple product differences. So I want to unpack that as well as bring you in on the little secret in terms of why this is here in the first place. So without further ado, let's get unboxing and I'll reveal the big reason why I have a brand new Kamado Joe Big Joe Series 3 to unbox in the first place a little bit later on. Let's get started. Okay, our first step is going to be removing this outer layer of packaging. This is where one of my favorite things about unboxing a Kamado Joe product is you go from, oh my gosh, this is incredibly daunting, to looking like you're nearly ready. So at this point, before we've even started, I would budget about being an hour out before we need to phone a friend and start lifting. So our first plan of action is to remove all of our outer packaging and start getting ready to our first step of assembly. In the 4 years since I last did this, the cart originally came shipped sort of strapped on top, where it is now packaged all in this one packaging container where everything that we need is going to be inside. So without further ado, let's get unboxing. Well, if that doesn't feel like the most productive 5 minutes of your life, I don't know what will, because we look like we've gone from a ton of work to nearly ready to grill, but that is not quite the case. Now, one of the advantages of the Kamado Joe unboxing experience is that there's very little to do compared to 15 years ago when I did my first Big Green Egg, and you have to assemble every intricate detail of the band and hinge assembly. But the downside, if there is such a thing as a downside to that, is that some new owners don't become intimately familiar with the inner workings of their airlift hinge. And so just because it comes assembled doesn't necessarily mean that it comes tight. So the first thing that we're going to do is use the included hardware. So in here we have the wrenches and sockets that we need, as well as a very important tool. Do not throw this out. This is your airlift hinge lock assembly, which you will need if you ever need to do some service work on your dome. I have an entire video dedicated to that in terms of how to remove the dome, reassemble it, and get everything back airtight. So put this in a safe spot, and I'll move the camera behind our Kamado Joe Big Joe Series 3 here so we can get to work checking to make sure that everything is snug as a bug at the back of our grill before moving on to assembling our cart. So this is the first area that we want to check for tightness. I can just tell looking at the bend on these washers and bolts, you can see here that that was going to be snug, so no surprises. And I think we're in good shape down below, but we'll give that a quick check. And we need a little bit of tightening down here on the bottom one. And I need the included socket to stop my nut from moving here. So we got a couple turns, glad we checked. Next we're going to check the airlift hinge. So again, using included hardware, let's check the back of our airlift hinge. It's good, good, good. Do the other side. So the two things that we're checking here, first with checking the bands, making sure that these are tight before we start doing a lot of opening and closing the dome. That's going to help make sure that our bands don't slip and end up out of alignment. And this causes an overbite or underbite issues. The back screws here are going to again help make sure that our airlift hinge assembly is attached to these two bands, and everything here is really tight. So I was only able to make a small adjustment on the bottom. We are good to go. So next up, we're looking for this bag of hardware, which is what we need to attach our legs to the base of the cart. So let me move the camera back out. I'll take you fast forward while I install these. You'll just see here that we have our 3 holes and bolts. Since this will be easier to show you here, lining up to our 3 holes and bolts. We'll put the hardware through and attach that from the underside. So first one is on, and you can see this is still very loose. That's just finger tight, as we still want to be able to get in the lower tray for storing our deflector plates or the SlowRoller. If we did this really tight, that might give us a problem later on. I'll take you back to fast forward while we do the remaining 3. We're ready to install the bottom storage accessory. Now we're ready to tighten everything up on our storage base, as well as fastening the legs to the cart. Okay, everything's nice and snug. I've just rotated it now so you can see upside down, but the Kamado Joe logo, as if you've got a little bit of OCD and you like me, I like to have the foot brakes right near the front. So if this is going to be the front of the grill and this is where I want to apply the foot brake, I'm going to look for the two wheels of the foot brake and install them in the front position here. And then I'll install the two wheels without the foot brake towards the rear. Take it fast forward while we get these on. So next I'm going to work on the hinge bracket for our folding side shelves. If I was leaving this as is, there's nothing else I need to do but drop those onto the two little hooks and swing up. But I'm actually going to be trading places with these brackets, since these are going to be going on my Big Joe Series 3, which I'm going to be giving away to that special project, and I don't want these installed to go into my table. So I'll take a fast forward while I remove these, and then we'll install them in the exact same position on my old Series 3. I'll make note while we're here, you'll see that these screws have a little bit of play. These are just sitting inside of the metal bottom band. This is why, if you see in the instructions not to lift from your side shelf brackets, that these cannot hold the 400 or something pounds of our Big Joe Series 3 or any Kamado Joe model, is these are just recessed in as part of our airlift hinge and band assembly. So for me, I'm just putting the bolts back on here so we have a nice finished look, and I'll retain the bracket along with the washers to install on my original Series 3. Next, to make it easier to lift, I want to remove all the internal components, charcoal basket, as well as our multi-piece firebox, and our divide and conquer rack system is in here. So almost to an hour on the dot, that's when we started. I had texted a friend and say, hey, show up and see if you can help me lift out my old Big Joe, which I forgot to turn the camera on, and lift into place my brand new Big Joe. So for this part, you definitely need a spare set of hands, particularly for the Kamado Joe Big Joe. Now, interestingly, the manual has updated here. When I first installed this, the safe lift point in the manual is into your ash drawer here, where you get a nice grip. Like I mentioned before, you do not want to use the side bracket hinges. These are not sturdy enough to support the weight of any Kamado, and you don't want to use your handle here on the dome, as if you accidentally trigger your airlift hinge, that will open and you'll drop it. So the two safe spots in the past that were called out in the manual is down here in your bottom draft door, as well as the airlift hinge assembly on the back. Now this is part of the reason why I started tightening the bolts at the beginning. If there was any play in these bolts and you were to lift, the weight of the Joe itself would cause the bands to slide out of alignment and cause some other problems down the road. As these are anchored, there's little holes in the ceramic with an anchoring pin, and if those were loose, that could damage the ceramic underneath. In the new manual, there's no mention of the safe lifting point, only an icon showing two people lifting with the knees, holding sort of pressure onto the side, which there's just not really a way, if you're coming into a table, that I can lift this from the side and hold my share of a couple hundred pounds without dropping that. So my choice, not the official Kamado Joe booklet, so I definitely wouldn't recommend deviating that. But for me, my personal choice, given that I have a manual still in the garage from my original one, those are the safe lifting points. That's what I chose to do for my own personal grill. So obviously, if you're going to deviate from anything in the Kamado Joe manual, use so at your own caution. There are a number of tools out there, like Ceramic Grill Store has a chariot system for lifting and carrying eggs and Kamados to and from different places, which is really, really easy, but nothing like that outside of maybe an engine hoist is going to work for getting a Big Joe down into the table. So that's what I did for me. Use at your own caution, but many hands make light work. And even as you saw there in fast forward, that two people can navigate a Big Joe up into the table, no problem. So now that we have our Joe in the table, let's get to work at assembling our multi-piece firebox, our ash collection tool, and everything else that we need to get ready for our first fire. Okay, so if we're following along on the manual, the first thing we're going to do is install our ash collection system, which would go like this. You drop this down below, then we would install the pedestal for our multi-piece firebox right on top. And then our ash removal tool would be able to slide in and out and remove any ash. Compared to something like the Big Green Egg, or more recently the Golden's cast iron Kamado, the Kamado Joe system is light years ahead of removing ash. There's just no good way in Big Green Egg or the Golden's cast iron Kamado to be able to get the ash out from underneath. I found, for my personal preference, I reinstalled this, and over the summer I had it back in for 6 months, and I just found a lot of ash builds up. I use my grills very often, and so for me, since the multi-piece Firebox assembly that we're about to do right now, you'll find out it's something that's good to do once, but not something that you'll want to do that often. The shop vac that I have blows ash everywhere, and so vacuuming it out isn't something that I personally want to do, and or using a leaf blower and again blowing ash everywhere is not for me. So instead of using this, I'm going to opt for something like a kick ash can that allows me to catch all my ash and remove that every single time and never have to touch the multi-piece Firebox assembly once I've done it here. But if this is your first time and you want to figure out what works for you, go ahead and install this at this point and place the Firebox ring as well as the multi-piece Firebox on top of that. Give it a go, see what you like. For me, in my workflow, I prefer not using the vacuum, and I like getting all the ash out. So I'm going to get rid of this. Place in our multi-piece Firebox base. Just want to confirm the alignment right now, so sliding this into our ash drawer, looks good. Next, we're going to grab the pieces of our multi-piece Firebox. You'll see that these will close up together. So where to start? I always like to place my first piece right here at the front, lined up and covering and blocking the bottom draft door. I found if you start to place the seams right where the air is coming in, this can just affect, again, how much airflow you're getting. And if you're not used to controlling temperatures, or you're wondering why, you know, one grill is acting one way and you're getting slightly different results, if you have sort of a direct path of air right into the front of your charcoal basket, that can perhaps cause some of those differences that people have reported seeing. So for me, I always recommend just placing this piece right in the front, just like so, so that there is no seam right here where the opening it is for our ash collection tool. Drop in the remaining pieces of our multi-piece Firebox. Okay, so at this point we have our multi-piece Firebox in, and I'm looking for the bottom right now to be fairly consistently spaced, not worrying about the seams up top where you see those sort of spreading out. Those will tighten up as we pull everything together. So unless you're an octopus and you're able to manage this next part, which is one of the areas that most people ask for help, I find the easiest way to navigate this next step here is with something like some paper towel or toilet paper, and we're going to make little balls just to prop up against the back of each ceramic pedestal here. I'm also going to break off a coat hanger and scoop these out. I found, having tried to get behind to clean, particularly as I mentioned earlier with the stock system and I wanted to get everything out, that these do not completely disintegrate, and there's little wads that can slide down over time and get behind the air holes. And so just getting these out after we use them for the installation is now my most recent updated sort of tips and tricks from a technique perspective. So we'll roll this up, pull out each pedestal, slide a ball behind, just so it holds it out against from the base, just like that. Take a fast forward while we do the remaining pedestal pieces. Okay, so I'm not quite done yet, but I'm noticing I'm having no problem here at the back getting in behind where this is really tight right along the front, which means my visual eyeball estimate of where to place the base for our multi-piece Firebox is too close to the front. So just reaching in at the bottom, I'll pull out the ash tool. I'm going to push the entire assembly towards the back so that we get a nice centered space, make it much easier for installing our remaining rings. Okay, that slid back about ½ an inch. So now that we've got these propped up, we're ready to install the ring. This is something that I'm noticing is quite different. Hard to fit this all in camera. I'm trying to twist this side to side, and the gauge of steel, I'm no longer able to do that. For comparison, here's my original one, and you can see, well, hopefully that's in camera, but I'm able to manipulate that fairly flexible, and they're prone to getting a little bit warped after years of use, which you can see coming through. So glad to see that that rumor is true, and we have a thicker gauge steel ring here that I'm not able to manipulate side to side. So that will just drop down like so now onto our pedestals, push down, And then using a broken hanger, I found is the easiest way, just to reach in and sort of support the pedestals and scoop out those little wads of toilet paper that we just dropped down in there. Okay, so we've got all those balls that were wadded up that could potentially be blocking some airflow later on out. And now at this point, I just want to make sure that we have nice even spacing all the way around. Just eyeballing that here, I think we're a touch tighter on the left than the right. So I'll just again reach down below and reposition the firebox a little bit so we have nice even spacing all the way around, so that these air holes can do their trick and draw air into our firebox nice and evenly. Drop in our kick ash can, charcoal basket. The Series 3 comes with a charcoal basket. There used to be a fire grate on the Series 1 or Joe Jr. or every egg that I'd owned before that. If you do have an older model and you have the fire grate, you want to remove that. You don't need that anymore. The charcoal basket replaces its purpose. The Kamado Joe basket also comes with this divider that can go in these grooves and help make it easier if we wanted to separate our charcoal front to back or left to right. You can do that either way, no problem. But as the airflow in a Kamado naturally draws from front to rear, if you were to do this, I would orient it this way and put the charcoal towards the back versus the left or right side. But that's again just a user preference thing. Take this out for now. Install our divide and conquer rack. The next component that you will have received is called the X-ring. So there's a whole bunch of fun stuff that you can do with this. I've used it for things like deep frying, where if I want to have my wok up top, you install the sort of the metal circles here onto the little nubs, and that'll help make sure that this is secure and can't go anywhere, and we can raise and lower this to all three positions. The other thing that is often something I recommend is using this for your heat deflectors. So if I were to drop this on the lower level, like so, and with that installed, we can drop in a heat deflector like this, like a pizza pie configuration. And if you were warming up your grill, I would install it just like this, so the heat can come up and get heat into our dome, so it's nice and heat soaked. And then we're ready to get cooking. We can slide this together, and there's absolutely no risk that these slip and fall off and potentially break. This is the #1 way that people get into trouble cracking their ceramics, is dropping them, trying to sometimes position on the lower tab. So if you're not sure about that, this is my recommended starting position. For the pros that want to get the deflectors right down on there, you'll see that the notches on the charcoal basket also serve another purpose, which is holding our deflector stones. Again, why this sometimes causes trouble is after you've lit your grill and there's an active fire, trying to not have this slide off like that or fall off like that when you're getting the second deflector in is what can cause some trouble. So the way to avoid that is get some high heat gloves and not let the fire get absolutely raging where you're kind of in a panic situation trying to drop those down in there. Last thing while I have you here, and that is installing the cooking grates in the correct position. So I say correct position because you can technically go either way, where you could install your grids like this and have the notch fit up in here. The issue with that is that this can rotate. So if I keep spinning here, you see I can rotate right off. So if you were sort of aggressively cleaning your grates or you're cooking and knocking things around, to prevent that happen, the way that these are designed is to actually serve as little locks for your cooking grates, and now that is nice and secure. So I can twist left, right, and that is not going to go anywhere. So that's exactly how I'd want to set up. While we're here, let's grab some charcoal and start a break-in burn. I mentioned a break-in burn, but that's one of the things I like to help the gasket glue seal. There's also little bits of styrofoam. I did my best to sort of wipe them out, but before I do my first cook, I don't want any traces of styrofoam, and since I don't need the grill for the remainder of today, I'm not going to be cooking until tomorrow, I might as well get some of these packing materials I can even see on the cooking grates and things like that out of the grill. So we'll get some charcoal, start our first fire, and then I can tell you about my special project. Start our grill up for the first time. You can either use a fire starter or a grill torch like I'm using. Over time, I've just fallen for the ease of use of something like a grill blazer grill gun, as I'm able to go from 0 right now in the winter to 400 degrees and cooking in under 15 minutes. I've actually timed this versus fire starters, and that was in around 40 minutes from memory. I did a whole video dedicated on that, but that's the too long didn't read version. So let's get a nice hot fire, and I'll actually show you the deflector stones setup that I was recommending a moment ago. Let's fire it up. So if we were doing a cooking fire, the way that I would do this is install our X accessory ring in the bottom position. Since I'm going for a hotter temperature of around 400 degrees Fahrenheit, let that come up for 30-40 minutes, and then we're just going to shut everything down and leave the dome closed overnight to cure our gaskets. I'm going to go for the second level. Drop in a deflector, second deflector, and just like our pizza configuration, we are allowing the flames to come up through and preheat our dome. Let's close our dome. So while we're warming up, we can swing our control tower all the way open. And I would leave that there no matter what you see on your temperature gauge on the dome. Is wait until we can feel heat no matter what temperature you're going for. I want something where I can have my hands on here for 4 to 5 seconds and it not start to be something like, oh, that's getting warm. But once it starts to get warm after 4 to 5 seconds, you say, okay, but that's enough. That's about the perfect point to start adjusting your vents. If you're brand new and looking for a quick reference guide on my website at Smoke and Dab Barbecue, I've created a temperature guide for every common temperature with visuals that show you the exact vent settings for every single temperature. It's a great resource if you're just getting started or you've got someone in your family looking to skip years of frustration and the learning curve, which is why I put that together. But for now, I'm just going to leave this wide open till we get to a temperature of 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Let that ride along for 30 to 45 minutes, and then we'll shut it all down. So a couple more loose ends before we get into the update with the old Big Joe. So I'm going to install the side shelves back now that we are in cart mode, but while I have it here, it's always a good reminder spring and fall to check the tightness of our top and bottom bands. That was pretty snug. And that's pretty snug. So I got maybe 1/8 of a turn. So set a reminder or do it when you change your furnace filters. Now let's get these off and install our side shelves. So these always go, this is the rear, so this always goes with the little knob pointing towards the inside. Whereas on the other side, we'll have the knob pointing together. So that's what our side shelf will fold onto, which drop into place just like so into those 2 slots, lift up, push in. So they hit those 2 little knobs that are facing each other, and we are locked and loaded. Now let me grab the SlowRoller, as this is another area where there's been a couple updates since I did this a few years ago. So what hasn't changed is the storage of our SlowRoller. So again, this is my old Series 3. I've just dropped it on the cart as I'll be moving it around, but the cart is what we assembled earlier. So the SlowRoller or your heat deflector plates can go on this bottom storage area, and then the larger part of the SlowRoller just up on an angle slides in just like so. If you're ever having trouble, that's how you do it. What has changed looking at my SlowRoller compared to all other new SlowRollers I've ever helped unbox, or my own, like my Big Joe Series 1 when I bought the Joe and added a SlowRoller, is there used to be a maximum temperature stamped on the outside of the SlowRoller as well as in the instruction manual that said safe operating temperatures up to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you're ever going back through some of my old videos and seeing things like using your SlowRoller as a vortex or double indirect or hot and fast cooking or getting great crispy chicken skin, there was temperatures creeping up into the 400 to 450 degrees, and I would always stay about 50 degrees clear of the maximum temperature range. But if you look at the expanded user manual on the Kamado Joe website, late 2023, the maximum temperature range for the SlowRoller has been updated to, I believe, it's 300 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll put the exact amount in the description, or I'll put it in the text up on screen so you can follow along. So just note, if you're following along with a brand new SlowRoller, to confirm either it's printed on your SlowRoller or what's in your owner's manual for the safe operating temperature. And as of late 2023, or for me now in 2024, 300 degrees Fahrenheit is the maximum safe temperature for the SlowRoller accessory. So you've been so patient. Thanks for waiting. Elapsed time, this was about an hour to get us completely unboxed and set up. Again, I texted a friend earlier about an hour before starting. They got here a little bit early. We've already started our first fire. So total time here is an hour and 7 minutes. So this is something obviously I've done a couple of times either for myself or helping friends, so you do get quicker. But again, I've not assembled any major brand Kamado and had it go together that easy. This is an amazing area that Kamado Joe's packaging team has done a great job making for a great unboxing experience. And I definitely do recommend, as I showed earlier, taking the steps and the time to actually get to know how some of these components work. So if you ever have any eventual maintenance down the road, this is not a brand new experience for you in terms of how all these things come together. But for the elephant in the room, why now 3 Kamado Big Joes? Well, there's no way that one person or family could use 3 Big Joes, so I actually have a special project in mind. And so I mentioned earlier, I bought my Kamado Joe Big Joe Series 1. 4 years ago, Kamado Joe sent me that Big Joe Series 3, and as a thanks for YouTube, I get some credits I can spend in the store a year. I blew the piggy bank on a brand new Big Joe Series 3. So why spend all those credits on a Big Joe Series 3 when I already have a Big Joe Series 3? Well, I am working on an opportunity I think is going to be really cool, that throughout the next couple months, one of the top science and engineering universities in the nation is going to be running a whole bunch of tests. When we test cars, there's 0 to 60 performance times. Manufacturers can claim a bunch of things, but there's real world data. When it comes to grilling and smoking, it's a bit of a mystery what's going on inside of our grill. So I've come up with a whole bunch of tests and have some crazy smart minds and the scientific engineering tools to actually validate what's going on, to help unpack some of the mystery of what's going on inside of our grill. But to do all of these amazing tests, they need a grill for the long haul. So that is where my Big Joe Series 3 is headed, and I didn't want to be without it. So thanks Kamado Joe for the credits that I could blow it all in one shot on my Series 3, and I hope you subscribe and have notifications turned on for later on in 2024 when I can come back with some of the tests that are going on with this up till now top secret project that I think is going to be very insightful in terms of giving us real data that we can make adjustments to how we're using our grills to get the absolute most out of them. That's it for today. So unless you got a question and you want to hang out in my members live, details are down in the description. I'll see you in the next one. I'm James from Soaking Head Barbecue signing off. Remember, don't be afraid to fire it up.